Hey everybody, what's up? Frank Fradella here. Welcome back to the second episode of Works in Progress with Frank Fradella. I'm your host, Frank Fradella. Here today, joined by the lovely, the talented, the exceptional, the very kind, Kyra Wilson of Kyra Wilson Studios. Kyra, hi.
Hi.
So you were kind enough some weeks back to give me a little bit of your time in helping me kind of identify what I should maybe be doing with my art, how I should be approaching it. And I found that conversation really helpful in that it was questions that nobody else was asking. And that indicated to me that there was a point of view there underlying that, and there was experience underlying all of that that would be helpful for others to hear. And so I was wondering if you could explain what that experience is and how you've applied it to your art.
Okay. Well, I think the experience that you're specifically referring to is that I also have a business degree. So I originally got an associate's degree in fine art way back in the 90s. And I didn't take it forward and had a family and everything. And then I still wasn't comfortable going and engaging in the arts as a professional. So I went back to school and got a degree in business administration, but with an emphasis in marketing because there's still an art slant in business. And I went and tried to work a normal job, and that didn't work out very well. So I realized that I had to do art. Art was what I needed to do, but I also realized that art is a business. And if you're going to do it as a career, you have to approach it as a business. It's a passion, it's a talent, it's everything else too. It's something you have to practice at every single day. But at the same time, I think that the idea of a professional artist has been over romanticized to the point that people approach it not realizing that they need a business foundation in order to understand what they're doing in order to be successful at it. So it sounds complex. It's basic.
No. So I totally agree with this point of view in that if you're just trying to do art, if you're trying to create art, it's multidisciplinary, right? If you're drawing the human body, you can spend weeks or months studying the skull, face, the muscles in the face, how flesh stretches over that skull, and how everything from form shadows to cast shadows to skin tones to there's color theory baked in there. And that's just to paint a face, right? When you get into human anatomy, it gets bigger. If you want to put that person in a room while you're painting them, you've got to understand perspective, you got to understand texture, you've got to understand, right? There's so many different disciplines baked into this thing that we call art, right? And I know that so many artists spend a lot of their time constantly trying to level up, trying to improve their pieces to make the stuff look better, right? But when you approach art as a professional, there's other skills that you have to learn now too. And it's not just, anatomy and physiology, and it's not just light and shadow. Now it's, how do I get my stuff out there? How do I position this? What is my niche? Who are my target customers? Like there's a new way of thinking about this that should be baked into the process. And that's what I found really compelling about the conversation that we had, because we barely talked about art as much as we talked about how to think about art in terms of how to get it in front of people.
Yeah, I just feel that art is, there are people who have a talent for art, and then there are artists, and then there are artists who are making their living with it. And in order to become a professional artist, you can say that you're a great aunt who does these wonderful paintings of whatever is an artist, and she is, but is she a professional artist? Unless she's making her living and selling it and, doing the hustle. No, because there is a whole different level. I can be good with numbers. That doesn't make me an accountant until you're in the position of accountant and you're trying to balance everything that's coming at you from the various business needs. And in art, you need to have the artist talent. You need to have the physiology. If you're going to do people, you have to have chemistry because it's mixing, unless you're in digital, then you have to have computer science. You have to be a master. It's almost like the difference between a dentist and a brain surgeon. Brain surgeon's got to know all the basic stuff and then has to know extra stuff. And not saying that we're doing brain surgery, but people underestimate the complexity of being a professional artist, and they think that they can paint some pretty flowers and they can go and set some stuff up and sell some stuff, and then they're a professional artist. And it's like, no, you're on the right path. You've tried something new. But if you're going to pursue it, you literally have to learn accounting, marketing, business practices. You know, one of the first things that I talk to artists when they ask me for advice is I talk to them about their costs. What does a piece cost you to make? And they have no idea. Or if they put it together, it's like, well, the brushes cost me this much. The paint costs me that much. I said, okay. Oh, not the brushes. They don't think about the brushes. The paint and the canvas. And then it's like, okay, how about your brushes? Why reuse those? Yes, but you have to replace them. You know, what about the light you're using to turn on in your room? What about the computer you use to search an image to get an idea? I mean, there's so many aspects of this that they don't take into consideration when looking, and that's overhead pricing. You know, they have to know what their cost is. And so a lot of these people will go through their costs once they walk through it with me, and they'll realize that they're practically paying people to take their art. They're paying far more to create it than they are to sell it, getting it. So.
And I think that, so my experience has been, even when you've addressed that with people and you've pointed that out and you've literally shown them numbers, they'll continue to run their business that way. And that's something that I find curious, right? And I think that there's something there in that, like, I can't charge more. My customers would not pay more than what I'm asking for right now.
Yes. Yeah, they're locked into understanding their customer base. And there are times as an artist that you have to grow out of your customer base. So I'm actually approaching that myself. My prices are at a specific point, and frankly, once I get reorganized again, they're going to jump by probably 30%. And that's a huge jump, and that is going to price out a lot of my classical group right now. But I've done it before, and where there's a demand and there's a willingness to pay for more, there are also clients at the next level as well. So, but not everybody who first starts out and they, you know, get out of their first class of paint and sip and think that they can sell it, you know, can price theirs at $20,000. It doesn't work that way. So there's a learning process in what is art is tricky because it's a luxury market, but it's an upside down luxury market. It's also an investment market, which is different. So, you know, art is usually worth far more than what it ever sold for to the artist. So you see, you know, Picasso didn't get millions and millions of dollars for his one painting. You know, the artist dies, it's 30, 40, 50, 100 later, and suddenly it's worth more. I mean, Van Gogh, you know, he didn't see anything.
Yeah. So, okay. So, is it possible for artists to just come in at the high end? Like, can you just say, I'm not starting low. I'm not doing this $20 print thing. I'm going straight for the $2,000 gallery stuff. Like, I'm not doing anything else.
The only artists who I've ever seen do that are, so this is the other facet with art, is it's who you know. And so I have seen somebody do that before because their parents were extremely wealthy and belonged to a country club. And they rubbed shoulders and elbows with the right people who were willing to go, oh, here's $20,000 for that painting of that little sailboat over there. You can do it. And that's not the same thing as going out and commanding that kind of price because you've earned it almost, you know, that you've got a following who's willing to pay for it. They like what you're doing, the techniques there, you know, there's myriad aspects to this. And so, and the only ones who do that are giftedly connected. So, you know, I'm sure you've heard insider, outsider art. No, okay. So there's insider art. Those are the people who go to the right schools, know the right people, travel the right circles. Everybody else is outsider art, basically. Just, you know, simple definition of it. And then there's the lowbrow, highbrow art, stuff like that. It all fits into this hierarchy of classist almost system in the art community and in the gallery systems. So a lot of people were on the outside and they started creating their own galleries. But for the longest time before the internet, it was very much you are on the outside. If you don't know the right people, I don't care how good you are, you're not getting in here, which is another thing. It's like some people are painting stick figures and getting their stuff in these huge galleries and all over the world. And then other people have this amazing talent and they can't even get, a hello from these galleries.
Yeah.
So there's no logic well, there's some logic in art, but the art market is tricky. And now that we have the internet age, we have the ability to reach our own market, but we have to know what that is. And so even though somebody might understand that they're spending $50 themselves on a piece that they've been selling for 30, there is a point at which it's okay to do that. When you're first starting out and you're trying to say, hey, I'm here. This is what I can do. I'm going to grow, because artists grow. If you're not growing, then you're missing something. If you ever look at your work and you're like, boy, it's been the same thing for 15 years, something's wrong. Take a vacation. You need to figure it out. Something's wrong. So, but I'm going to grow. I'm here. This is what I'm doing right now, and create some interest, and then grow.
Okay, wait, hang on a second. There's something about this that just popped for me. So is the artist state one of just inherent and eternal dissatisfaction with their work?
No, not dissatisfaction, growth.
Okay.
Evolution. If you are, everybody gets frustrated and has pieces that they need to burn and do. And they also have ones that they love, and then later look back and go, I really love it, but boy, I see so many problems with it. We'll always know where all the bodies are buried in our work.
Right.
We all will. And so, but I think of it a little bit. So art, this is where it becomes more romanticized thing. Art is sort of like dating and looking for the right person. And just because you don't match with somebody doesn't make it the wrong person. And then when you match with somebody, doesn't make them flawless. Mm-hmm. You appreciate who that person is, even with all their flaws, even with their problems, and art. And then you choose to grow together. That's art. You can look at your stuff and grow from the mistakes or the areas that you see that you can do better now, or you can do better the next time, mm-hmm. without hating everything you've done, and move forward. And if you hate everything, then again, you're in the wrong spot. You got to find something better, because you can't go to work and hate everything you did.
Right. So what I've seen a lot with artists that I've talked to is that they find this kind of sweet spot for them, where like they're still producing art and they're still trying to get better, but ultimately they continue to play in the same playground over and over again, right? They're really good at faces and they just keep doing faces, or they're really good at pinups and they just keep doing pinups. And so they find this kind of comfort zone where like, it's never going to be bad. Like I've done this enough that like, I'm never going to hate what I've done. And now I'm just looking to make this better. But it seems to me, and let me know what your thoughts are on this. It seems to me like that's really allowing only limited opportunity for growth. Would that be fair?
So it depends on why that person is in that place. So they're either in that place because it's the money trap. It sells, a lot of people want to buy it. And even though they wanted to do other things, that's what's selling. And so that's, everybody's been in a job where they felt like they can't change it, they can't leave it, they can't talk to the boss about changing their roles because you don't want to risk the money. So there's the money trap. There's also the comfort trap. I can do this. I can just do it like I'm sleeping, and I can do this and knock it out. But the problem is that art's not a normal job. You cannot fall asleep in it. So if you fall asleep in it, your work might sell, but you're never going to feel good about it. It's different than selling a painting where you know where the mistakes are. If you sell a painting that has no soul in it, then you'll have lost something, where a bad painting never takes you to that level. This is completely different. So if they're in there because of the money trap, that's one thing. If they're in there because they've fallen asleep, they can wake up, but they've fallen asleep, that's another one. And then there are some people who are just happy that way and they don't want to grow. Those people, if they're successful, tend to be people who are really good at gauging their market and enjoy the business side more than they enjoy the art side. Most artists, I think you'll find, hate the business side. So I mean, it's horrible. If we could go back to the days where I could get an agent and not do any of this and I could just paint, that's like a fairy tale. That would be fantastic, but that's not reality. So it's just,
Okay, so who would that be reality for? Like, at what point does that become your reality, or can you choose that as a reality?
when to have an agent and do all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't really seen too much of that except in the upper circles. Um, but even the most successful artists that I see, even the ones that are showing in those upper circles, that aren't based off of their family connections, tend to still have a major hand. What they have is assistants, not agents anymore. They don't have an agent come in and control everything and do everything for them. So all they do is paint, and they suddenly show up and say, "Oh, what are you working on? I need to go talk to a gallery," and then they run out again and do everything for you.
Right.
That's not really happening. I think it's a bygone era. I
Mhm.
wish it would come back. I think that if the right person's out there and listening, there's a lot of us that would really pay well for that. And with the digital age, there's an opportunity to help multiple artists at the same time. So it would be a good deal for some agents. But it's one of those things where there's a gap
Would
right now.
that So would that involve creating a new space for those things to be, where, like, if you've got people who are doing beautiful high-end fantasy art, right? But it's not going to be it's not going to be shown in a gallery in Greenwich Village, right? Like, does this work require a new space to be before that agent can appear and say, I've got people who can fill this gallery with amazing stuff?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood here. So are you saying you need to create a space where that art would be welcome, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, where would that art exist? I mean, I'm not sure the galleries that I think that we're talking about right now would,
Yeah, the
like,
higher
yeah, I
galleries
mean,
are you
yeah, like,
trying?
right. So, like, I've seen amazing, just absolutely amazing, gorgeous works of art within the pop culture sphere. And, that's an interest of mine, right? So, then, like, Alex Ross does this painting of Batman standing on a gargoyle with the camera up behind him, and, like, you're looking down on the streets of Gotham, and he's like, and just the wind blowing and bats flying by and the street coming up from this, and it's magnificent, and it's in gouache, and it's huge, and, like, it's not going to sit in the same gallery with a Picasso or a Waterhouse, right? Like, I mean, where does that level of work in this area get to live?
Well, that's the same sort of problem that every artist is facing right now, is that you have to understand your market, and you have to make sure you don't want to put a still life in a Comic-Con. You wouldn't do much range, and then here's Batman, and people would be very confused about what they're seeing. So the art, so if you understand the way traditional art has always kind of worked its way through society in the last few centuries, it's been a societal privilege, an event. There's a lot of political stuff that happened with the art too. Sometimes it wasn't welcome. But it was, certain people had it or commissioned it or showed it off in certain circles. So that's your microcosm way back when. Up until the internet, really, you had galleries where artists were competing to get in, and they had to fit the gallery persona, and they had to themselves fit the persona to the gallery so that the gallery wanted to represent them, whether they wanted a bleeding heart story or they wanted somebody who was really well educated and connected or whatever. The artist had to sell, and sometimes still do have to sell themselves as much as they sell their art. And so as a package deal, you have to make sure that you fit in with the right circle. As artists have been able to create their own platforms because of the internet, it's still the same problem though. You need to make sure that you fit in the right place. And if you want to start, so just a side note here, the internet came on board and a lot of galleries shut down because artists didn't need the galleries anymore. But the internet is so crowded now, and there are so many people trying to sell their art, not necessarily knowing if they want to be professional or not, just seeing that in order to maintain a professional persona, we're actually having to partner with galleries again. And so there's an uneasy relationship sort of happening, and I think we're all starting to work it out, but it's in an early, like getting back together with an old friend that maybe you graduated from high school with and you didn't part on the best of terms. So we're all having to recreate relationships with galleries again and figure out what that is. And there's more galleries now because that's an opportunity to open up for people who want to do that. That in itself is the opportunity to create a space for the art. Creating a gallery that is considered the upper echelon of the galleries, or ever, that is a target market. That's marketing. Those people get up and brush their teeth and have holes in their socks like everybody else. It's marketing and packaging, and it's how do you want to target your audience? And artists need to think about who is buying your work now. Who do they want? I mean, not like Powerball. Who do you want to buy your work? Who do you see buying your work as you improve and grow? And what kind of person does that like? What do they do? Are they, engineers, or maybe they're gardeners and obsessed with plants? Maybe you do all that kind of stuff. Maybe they're really into, maybe they're in LA with the Hollywood types and they're into the Batman and the movie and the pop stuff. But you need to know your market. You need to know kind of bracket wise, if they have expendable income, how much is that? And then you need to look at your own costs, your own value, look at people who are selling similar things and kind of get an idea of what you can sell it for. But then you also need to realize what you have been selling for and grow. Just as you grow in your art, you have to grow in your sales. So that's another thing too. If you don't grow in your sales price too, people are also going to buy, because everything else, even cereal, costs more than it did 10 years ago. So.
Right. So, so one of the things that I look at is the jump, right? And there's certain ways that you can increase your prices, and in a way that is uncomfortable for some, and you're going to see some people fall away from those offerings, and some of them really loyal followers of your work will come along, right? They might buy fewer pieces per year, but they're still in it, right? And then there's this thing that I'm fascinated by where, like, are you allowed to just reinvent yourself, right? Start doing a different kind of art at a different level and just say, this new stuff, this is what this costs now. I don't do that anymore, right?
Yep.
That was kind of like my training ground. I learned a lot from it, but now I'm doing this.
Well, I started as abstract, so yes.
Oh, okay, hey.
My first painting I ever sold in a gallery was completely abstract. So yes, absolutely. You can, so one of the things is art may be a complicated profession when you really look at it, when you really break it down and you get off of the whole Hollywood books, romanticize it, can't even say it, but when you get out of the stereotypes and you get into the details, it's complicated. It may be more complicated than a lot of other jobs out there, but it is also a place where there are almost literally no rules. Don't hurt anybody,
Yeah.
Be safe, don't hurt anybody, but and there's certain chemical rules where you might blow up your studio, so don't do that. But other than that, there are no rules. One of the biggest complaints that people have when they go to art school is that the art teachers try and force them to do art their way. Instead of teaching them a technique and letting the students learn it, it's like, no, I want to look like my art or what I think is pretty, instead of allowing the student to grow. And so many people quit art school because of that. But quitting art school is freeing. This is why I didn't go forward and get my bachelor's. I learned more doing every single piece. I learned something from every single piece I do. I grow every single time, even when it's a horrible thing, I have to throw it away. It doesn't matter. I grow no matter what. And that kind of growth was not because of anything that I got from my teachers. And they were nice people, but they were professional artists who didn't want to be there. They wanted to be doing whatever.
Right.
So, but this kind of ability to do anything, grow anything, learn on your own, and now with the internet, with these videos that artists are sharing, we're one of the most open communities that I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of different professional communities. Art it can be brutal, but it is open to you being different. I've
never found a more welcoming, honestly kind community anywhere on the internet than the artist community. And I've been in a lot of communities, right? And some of them, like, I'm a mindset coach, right? Like, I work with coaches who are supposed to be really good at mindset, and some of them are catty bitches, right? Like, it's a rough place to be, right? Like, people breaking bottles and stabbing you with a beer, right? But every artist that I've ever met, I'm like, hi, I'm Frank. I'm an artist. And like everyone's just like, hey, welcome. Like nobody wants to see my art card. Nobody wants to see like, all right, let me see your work before we're gonna let you in this group, right? Like it's just,
Well,
yeah,
they're out there, but for the most part, it's good.
it's good. Well, my experience has been overwhelmingly positive. Like I introduced myself to you, and one day I asked if we could have a chat, and you said yes. Like that that's tremendous. I mean, you're an expert in your field, right? You've done very well for yourself, and your insight is invaluable into this. And I was very grateful for you taking the time because it's helped me shift how I think about my art, the art that I'm going to produce, and where I want that art to be seen, and how much I can charge for that art, who my target customers are. Now, I come from a marketing background, so a lot of the stuff that you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. Getting it to connect in my head with art and how I was doing that was where I needed help. And so you did that brilliantly. Thank you. So we can talk about, God, I can talk about this with you forever. But before we go, I want to get a couple of quick kind of lightning round questions out of you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, where do you have your art for sale?
For sale, I have it in a couple. I do some gallery shows, but mostly through my website. So it's kyrawilson.net, and then that links up to my shops, and then Facebook.
Okay.
So.
So now, do you find that that's all challenging, or do you only market one of them that kind of feeds into the others?
I really find that the online presence has been critical to my sales, and so people seek me out. I have Instagram, I have Facebook, and I have my website, and leads come in from all three. And then some galleries, I do some group shows and things, and so I've started participating in those again, and some leads have come in through those. So they all kind of feed together. So it's a
Cool.
symbiotic.
How important was it to you to paint what you're painting?
It's important. So I went through a growth period where I used to paint a certain way, and I did a bunch of Alice in Wonderland type paintings. And I experienced a period of growth where my whole technique shifted. And unfortunately, I wasn't done with the series. And so it was really hard to finish out the series for me. It took a really long time. I had a collector who commissioned the end of the series, and she was so patient with me because I had so much trouble facing the easel because it wasn't what I should be doing. And then once I finished it, I let it go. And then for me, it's as precise as I am in business about different aspects, I am less precise about what I'm painting, and I more am drawn to what do I feel. As far as, right now I'm painting a lot of animals. I used to paint figures. I'm going back to figures. That's coming because that's the direction I'm tugged. So that's where it starts sounding more, fruity. So I'm going where the feelings take me, but that's the truth. I have every painting I've sold. The ones that have sold best have hit a mark with people is when I painted what I wanted to and not what somebody else wanted me to.
Right. So you're in the more woo-wooish coaching world, you say you follow the energy there, right? Like okay, this is where I'm being pulled. This is where I'm being drawn. There's some kind of magnetic thing that's pulling me this way. And I think those things are invaluable to follow. Those instincts are your knowing, right? That like, this is what I'm doing next. This is where I'm being called to go. Then go there, right? Being in resistance to that, I think gets a lot of artists into a rut where like, what I really like to do is this, but right now, this is all people are buying from me. And I kind of have to keep doing this art because it keeps paying the bills.
So I think it's important to understand that I'm coming from a privileged place. And so it's not necessarily fair for me to totally answer that because to answer it without qualifying it. I'm married to an air engineer. So he makes a good living. And so if I needed to completely quit my studio, I could, and we would be okay. So I am absolutely speaking from a place of privilege, and it's really important to say that. I can look back at my experience and say that for me, I did this whole series of paintings. I did this show, almost 2 decades ago, where I did all these paintings because the gallery owner asked me to do them in a certain way. And none of them sold, not a single one. So all these canvases had been wasted, all this paint had been wasted. And I felt like my time had been wasted because they weren't subjects that I had picked. And I got frustrated in between them because I wasn't thrilled with them. Even though the paintings were fine, I wasn't thrilled with them. And the stuff I painted in between, that sold. So there is a balance that a person has to strike between making enough money to keep themselves afloat, keep their business afloat, and they have to take into personal circumstances. Should they make room to make the other stuff? I would never suggest somebody suddenly stop painting everything that's selling and switch all the way over there. I would say paint a few, see how it goes. Transition. You don't want to get out of a hot bath and jump into an ice cold, swimming pool. Well, sometimes you do, but that's just usually that's a bit of a shock to the system. And what you want to do is instead transition. And if you can transition successfully, companies don't suddenly, Coca-Cola wouldn't stop making all soda and just say, here's cupcakes. They'd float a few cupcakes out there and see if people wanted to buy them. So you have to be smart about your business, because when your livelihood is on the line with it, you can't make drastic changes and think that it's just going to work out. It might be great. It might be the best thing ever, but nothing about that is time sensitive in a way that you have to cut everything else off and risk it all. Because again, that's another romanticized ideal. Oh, they're risking it all. They've quit their jobs and they're just going to paint and they're going to starve to death. Nobody wants to starve, and paints cost. So
yeah. So now I want to circle back here a little bit. You mentioned the Coca-Cola thing and that you're functioning from a place of privilege, but I'll argue that many artists have a day job, right? And they're hustling on the side to bring their art into the world and make more sales so that they can transition into a full-time art thing, right? So there's not this, for many of us, there's not this immediate threat of destitution and death, right? If we suddenly switch art styles, right? We've got that freedom. But one of the things, and I'll speak for myself personally here, is that when I'm drawing art I want to draw, right? When I'm doing things that are calling to me, something that I want to experiment with, a color palette or painting something underwater, which I've never done, and the way the light filters, like that's a really challenging experiment. I like that. So every time I've done that, the result has been better simply because there's so much more of me in it. I'm more committed to the outcome. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's that's something that needs to be said here, because how much of you're putting into your work matters, right? You can take commissions all day long, but if you don't love the subject matter that you're doing, the love of doing art will get you far, but it's not everything. Like yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely an emotional and a mindset component here that should be addressed and looked at and say, all right, well, I know that this is the work that's selling for you, and this is the work that people have been buying for 10 years. And there's a lot of sameness to that work because that's what is consistently sold. But I don't want people to only do that because that's all that's sold for them before, and they're afraid of alienating whatever market they've already kind of cultivated.
Well, but so this is one of the reasons why I only take on a couple artists a year, where I just kind of coach them, and they don't usually need a lot from me. It's just a few meetings, that kind of thing, where they learn about overhead and everything else. But one of the things that they also need to learn is about their market, and that their market is just as complex as they are. So maybe they've been buying Batman paintings from you all this time, but maybe they have a deep love of landscapes too, and you put that out there and they won't go, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. I mean, I've been following your work and buying those other ones for years, but I love this. Don't underestimate your market, but don't overestimate it either. This is why it's important to float things out there. Don't give up your day job.
Right.
Kind of float into it, and then follow the fire. If it lights and people are just all over it, follow it. But don't forget where you came from either. If you need to fall back, there's the only mistake in art is in not trying, because you literally have to show up. You have to show up. You have to put your hands dirty. And if you make a mistake, who cares? Nobody's going to see it. I mean, and if they do, you might actually help someone out. So art is one of these places of safety, because there's so much latitude to be who you are, try out new things, grow, and not get slapped down too hard. You know, you're gonna, rejection's hard, that's a whole other topic, but the truth is that you are actually safe. So money is not safe, but as an artist, you're safe. And so there's opportunities for people to grow and try and change things, as long, and the market's there too. It just might not be there right now. And so all this is really complex and hard to hit in just a few minutes, but it's something where each individual, once they figure out what they're doing, can grow. You know, you talk about somebody who makes the same thing over and over and over again, but there are some people who love business way more than they love art, and that they can go and market that stuff. They love it. They go to these cons and other things, and they're in their element. It lights them up. And they just put in just enough art that they enjoy it, even though it's the same thing over and over again, and they do all the sales, and they're very successful. And that's a different, we're sort of a recipe with different ingredients and different amounts in it, and we have to find what makes our recipe work. And so for them, that works. For me, that doesn't work. But that's okay. There's no censure towards it. It's just different. You know, when we spoke, that was one of the things I needed to understand about you. It's like, which element are you trying to, you know, make work for your art, your life? Are you more art focused? Are you more business focused? Are you middle? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you enjoy? Because I can't blindly answer the question of which way you should go without understanding what's at this particular time making up who you are and where you are with your art and your career. And then you can kind of go, okay. And then you can look at your market, and you can look at all the other little details.
Right.
So
there's a great question. Years ago, I tried to do this one Aquaman piece where I wanted Aquaman floating in the sea with a giant blue whale coming to meet him. Mm-hmm. And the piece is up on my Instagram, Sketch Foolery. And I've reworked that piece a couple of times over the years because I've gotten better, and I just keep returning to it to noodle with it. But the best question somebody asked me when I showed them the piece, I'm like, what do you think of this piece? And their response was, what were you trying to do with it? What were you trying to accomplish with this piece? And like, nobody had ever asked me that before, that how successful you are is entirely dependent on what your definition of success was when you started.
Exactly.
Right? And that is, I feel like that gets lost in the car, and that should be its own conversation, right? Because if your definition of success right now is you just want to sell 2 prints a week, great. Like, you can make that happen. That's an achievable goal, right? Yep. But then you understand that if that's your goal and you're literally doing zero marketing, and you're not putting out new work, and you're not, you know, being active in groups, and you're not putting out faith, if you're doing nothing to make that happen, then your success is likely not to won't be achieved. Yeah. So, but I find those things are really good because everybody's definition of success in this area is very specific to them. It's very individual, and being able to identify what your idea of success is, what your definition of success is, I think allows you to kind of reverse engineer how to get there.
Yep.
If you don't know that up ahead, then you're just kind of just throwing paint on the wall, right? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe this will work. Maybe it won't. I don't know.
I feel like it's a combination between your definition of success and what makes you feel happy, what makes you feel content, and that when you go to bed at night, you go, I'm satisfied with what I did today. And so it's both. In art, it's really important that it's both, because if you're unhappy, even though you're successful, you know, what's the point?
Right. Yeah. So I call those two things success and fulfillment, right? How fulfilled were you by what you did or what you achieved? Because I find that the definition of success is very often an external construct that comes at you. You know, people who make 6 figures a year, who have the you know, a mansion and a yacht, and the, you know, that's a Elmer J. Fudd thing. You got that, I saw. Okay, so like, that's many people's definition of success, right? But you can have that success, but are you fulfilled at the end of the day, right? Like, are you happy? Are you happy with you, who you are now, right? If all we cared about was the money, we could all go be stockbrokers.
Yep. No.
Nope. Right. Nope. That's not. Nope. Nope.
Nope.
Well, so I said I was going to keep this short, and then I went ahead and didn't. But Kyra, thank you so much for your time. It has been a true joy and pleasure to have you on the show. Show is Works in Progress with Frank Fradella. I'm Frank Fradella, and I've had a blast talking to this young lady. And please go visit her store. Go visit her website. It's KyraWilsonStudios.com.
KyraWilson.net.
KyraWilson.net. KYRA. There'll be a link. Don't worry, it'll be in the show notes. Go check out her stuff. It's absolutely amazing, gorgeous stuff. And if you've got any questions for her, please go ahead and ask them, and we'll see if we can circle back around with her at a later date and get some answers from you guys. Thanks for joining, everybody. Be good to yourselves, be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time.